Good afternoon. Welcome to CTIC's Economics of Cover Crops in the Northern Corn Belt. They've got a little cover slide for you. We'll go on to explain what the Conservation Technology Information Center is. I'm Steve Werblow with CTIC. I'm going to be moderating today. We've got a great program set up with some really knowledgeable speakers, and we're going to have an opportunity to hear about what's going on with the Farmers for Soil Health program, as well as really dig into the economics of cover crops in a more general terms. The Conservation Technology Information Center is really proud to host this series of webinars. For more than 40 years, CTIC has been bringing together people who are committed to conservation agriculture, to helping farmers be more economically and environmentally sustainable and prosper on their farms. And one of the ways we've been doing that the past several years has been through the Farmers for Soil Health program. And CTIC in particular has been zeroing in on providing technical assistance in Wisconsin, Minnesota, and South Dakota. We'll hear about that today. Let's go to the next slide. I mentioned we have some great speakers. We'll introduce them all as they each make their presentation. Then we're going to go to a Q&A session. And so for Q&A, there is at the bottom of your screen, there should be a little voice balloon with a question mark in it that says Q&A. You can type your question there, and that'll allow us to make sure that questions are addressed, and that if you see a question that you're particularly interested in, upvote it, and that'll float it towards the top of the list and make sure that we cover it as early in the Q&A as possible. Let's go on to our next slide. We just want to acknowledge our members. CTIC is a membership organization, and we're proud to have members from across agriculture throughout the supply chain, and bringing that membership together around conservation ag. Let's look at our partners too. That's another vital set of connections that we value and that we bring to the table. And we try to be that space where we can all discuss what kinds of information would be useful on the farm level to making sustainability happen. And with that, I'm going to hand over the mic to Ryan Heiniger, who is the Executive Director of CTIC. We'll talk a little bit about what CTIC is doing with Farmers for Soil Health.
Steve, appreciate everybody being on today, and to our panelists for lending their voice and expertise. I'm going to be just very brief here, but again, Ryan Heiniger, I'm the Executive Director, been with CTIC about 3 years now. I also farm in Southeast Iowa, and we use cover crops quite extensively on our operation. And the Farmers for Soil Health project has been an exciting one that I've been really glad to be a part of for several years now, entering our 3rd year of enrollment. We're going to give some sneak peeks to some great, exciting news coming here shortly this fall. But I really want to just give a shout out to our partners, as well as the team here at CTIC that is delivering the important technical assistance to farmers and the larger conservation ag community. So Teagan Duffy, our soil health specialist in Wisconsin, and Justin Jelsma, soil health specialist in South Dakota. And then officially next Monday, we're welcoming Maria Teresa Tancredi, our soil health specialist in Minnesota, who will be working out of the Moorhead area, but working statewide as well to do farm visits, help with all the onboarding, the enrollment part, but also most importantly, to make sure that cover crops are being integrated into the cash crop as smartly as possible. And one of the other elements in our technical assistance strategy is to have farmers help teach and train other farmers. And so we deploy that through our 9 cover crop coaches. We have 3 excellent farmer representatives, ambassadors in each of our states that are also kind of on call to make farm visits, to do other forms of tech support, and provide those real lessons, everything from nutrient considerations to chemistry to equipment, elements as well. And they're an invaluable resource, not only for CTIC, but for the larger project. So the last thing I'll just also give a teaser to is something that we'll talk more about at the very end, but in just about a week and a half, we're going to be releasing our Conservation Connector app, a central clearinghouse for where farmers and advisors can go to find information and cost share, not only on cover crops, but the larger realm of soil health and even broader conservation practices. So stay tuned for some more details about the Conservation Connector, another project we're very excited about here at CTIC. So without any further ado, I'll turn things over to my colleague Teagan and Justin to talk more about their specific roles and the ways that they're helping deliver this project.
Thank you, Ryan. So as Ryan mentioned, my name is Teagan Duffy, and I am the Wisconsin Soil Health Specialist. So I'm just going to talk a little bit more about the Farmers for Soil Health program and kind of where we're at and what we're doing. So the Farmers for Soil Health program is a 20-state cover crop cost share program that aims to increase adoption of cover crop acres in the United States to 30 million acres, which would be roughly doubling the amount of acres under cover crop management by 2030. So CTIC is responsible for covering 3 states, as we've kind of already mentioned, Wisconsin, South Dakota, and Minnesota. And to date, we have enrolled over 130,000 acres into the program. So we've had some great first couple of years in the program, but we have some exciting enhancements that are coming shortly here. So the USDA is reviewing some pretty exciting changes that will ensure that the program remains flexible and farmer driven in a couple of key ways. Unfortunately, we can't share specifics yet, but details are coming soon. So we expect to have some more information on those program enhancements in mid-September. So if you are currently planting cover crops or plan to plant them in 2025, be sure to contact your state soil health specialist, and you can find that at the farmersforsoilhealth.com website. And so these program enhancements wouldn't be possible without our program organizers. So I'm just going to give them a quick shout out. United Soybean Board, National Corn Growers Association, and National Pork Board have all been instrumental in getting these changes approved. And they've really been doing a great job working with us on the program. So I guess just on a personal note, I am about to round out my first year. In 2 days will be my anniversary with CTIC, and this is honestly the most excited I've ever been to be working on the program. I'm really excited about these changes. I was at a farm show last week. I was able to talk to a lot of producers about, the potential of them starting to use cover crops. I'm very excited, and I think this next enrollment season is going to be the best yet. So I'm going to pass it over to Justin to give you a little bit more information on what CTIC specifically offers.
Yeah, so as Teagan said, we're excited about some of the new programs coming forward. One thing that won't change is our support. We'll be there to help get farmers enrolled in the program if they so wish. Each state has a specialized soil health specialist, so helps with enrollment process, provides implementation and guidance and verification support. It's a hallmark of our Farmers for Soil Health program to help maximize your cover crop investment. As Ryan had mentioned, the cover crop coaches are in South Dakota, Wisconsin, and Minnesota to help farmer to farmer. As we had said, I'm a farmer myself in Southeast South Dakota, so each farm is very unique. You have different goals and different things you want to do. So whether or not you're with the specialists and cover crop coaches finding solutions, if you have challenges, whether you're trying to expand cover crops or just starting out. Like I said, as a farmer myself, we started using cover crops in 2018 and have livestock implementation. It's definitely been challenges along the way, but it's been fun. I know each farm is different, like I said, so you all have different goals, but we can definitely, with the cover crop coaches and specialists, help you trying to achieve those goals. And the kind of support we deliver. I'm really excited to bring this next program to you. I really enjoy being on farm with other farmers, learning from them in South Dakota, just getting out of the office and being on the road and meeting guys. We'll be at Dakota Fest next week. If anybody's in Mitchell, stop by the booth and check it out. But really excited for the panelists today. We're starting to understand more about the positive economics around soil health practices And in addition to the well-documented agronomic benefits, the new tools that are becoming available can provide real data for farmers, assess their management practices, and we're excited to support them with their journeys to maximize their on-farm soil health.
Great.
Thank you, Justin and Teagan, for that information. And just one other element that I would just add in terms of the program for payments. One of the most fascinating and I think beneficial aspects of Farmers for Soil Health is it allows farmers to enroll retroactively. So if you planted covers last fall, for example, you could enroll all the way through last February. And with some of the administration changes that retroactive enrollment actually got reopened this spring for a little while too. And so that cumulatively has slowed down the payments for 2024 cover crops in consultation with the verification technology that is used. And so I say all that to just quickly say that the payments that'll come directly from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation as the program fiscal agent should be forthcoming yet late this summer or very, very early this fall for any farmers that are on the webinar today that are inquiring about the status of their payments for last year's cover crop. Thank you. Back to you, Steve.
Great. Thanks for that update, all of you. It's great to see what CTIC has in terms of that expertise and help navigating the system, both for Farmers for Soil Health and also for cover crops and other conservation projects in general. So on that note, we are going to hear from our speakers now. And the first speaker is Brad Jordahl Redlin. He's Agricultural Conservation Services Manager for the Minnesota Department of Agriculture. He leads the state of Minnesota's Agricultural Water Quality Certification Program and was formerly Director of Federal Farm Policy Program at the Isaac Walton League. So Brad will share his research results from Minnesota's Water Quality Certification Program and explore the impact of conservation practices on farmers' bottom lines. So I'm going to hand it to you, Brad.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, CTIC. Thanks all who are attending. It's a great pleasure to be able to be here and speak with you this afternoon, Central Time Zone, if that's where we're all at. Jumping right into it, Brad Jordahl Redlin has already introduced Minnesota Department of Agriculture. At the Department of Agriculture and leading the conservation section of our department, economic impact and advantages from conservation are actually just key to our role, key to the work that we do, and key to the discoveries that we want to make. And so today I'll be talking about really cooperative work we're doing with Minnesota State colleges and universities. As you see on the slide in front of you, this is the 6th year of these annual reports on influence of intensified environmental practices on farm profitability. What that is the actual financials of Minnesota farms, with a subset of those being farms certified through the Agricultural Water Quality Certification Program that the Minnesota Department of Ag operates. I'll describe that really briefly in the next couple of slides, but the Minnesota State Colleges and the Farm Business Management Program is where the actual farm financials are accessed. They actually serve as financial advisors to growers. The Farm Business Management Program faculty does for thousands and thousands of growers across the state. The QR code there will bring you to their reports, and they have outstanding reports on lots of different topics. But what they do have, and was key to us when we were exploring this opportunity to tease out more information about the economics of conservation and soil health, was to actually access the actual finances of farms on an annual basis, exactly what their numbers were for all sources of income, all expenses, everything. So that's what we found. And the bar graph here is just a lead off point that since the 2019 crop season, every year, those farms that were certified through our program, whole farm certification process, have always had a higher average net income than the farms that weren't doing the same degree of concentrated environmental practices. So next slide, please. So to describe what the certification program is, I'll get through it real quick. I promise it's that's housed in the Minnesota Department of Agriculture. It brings along other agencies in our state, our Department of Natural Resources, our Board of Water Soil Resources, our Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. It's also a full partnership with USDA, NRCS, our state soil and water conservation districts, and even the EPA. It's establishing this program. But it is that partnership I've just described. We've done 1,675 farms plus. We're over 1.2 million acres certified in the thing. What is it? Simplest way to say it, it's just a whole farm planning. We go out and do a risk assessment across the entire farming operation, all land, rented or owned, every parcel, every crop in the rotation, just to seek out what challenge may be present there. The growers themselves know what it might be, but if this is boots on the ground, walking every field, going through every part of the rotation, pasture land, whatever it is, finding those conservation interventions that growers choose to adopt to remove risks that are identified. And that obviously there's more than one way to do that. So a lot of different practices get implemented, but cover crops on today's theme is obviously an outstanding one and probably the most popular one we do in terms of farmers' choices of mitigating the risks that have been identified, simply because they check so many boxes. I don't have to describe that for you folks, whether it's erosion or nitrogen scavenging or any of that stuff. But anyway, that's my quick take on this slide. Next slide, please. It's just reiterating then the point that through certification, again, it's not a particular initiative for any one practice or any one activity. It is simply needed interventions where they exist on the landscape to meet the environmental need that's there. So it's a whole host of things that happen on these farms. But I use that to further emphasize that obviously what we're talking about too is system management. So system doesn't mean one crop and it doesn't mean one conservation practice. It means all of it in collective performances. Again, I'm sure folks on the webinar today understand. Next slide, please. So as I said, this has been going on for 6 years. The results already described those in terms of the average of the farmer net income from the certified versus the entire cohort. But to examine a little bit about what the environmental cohort is, which is the water quality certified farms, and you see in the table in front of you, in compared to the entire host of Minnesota farms. It's pretty consistent, but it's important to tease these things out because we're trying to determine the economic impact of what's happening in the landscape. So I kind of point to the pie charts on the bottom, which show that environmental cohort, you see a little less on the livestock, or excuse me, on the crop only, a little bit more on the livestock and the crop and livestock combined in terms of the types of farms that are there. So you're seeing just a little bit more diversity. I would just label it simply. Production diversity in the environmental cohort, and that's important as we try to tease out what's happening with this study results. Next slide, please. So here's the actual it's the past 3 years and then a 5-year average as the table that they'd published. You see on average the average and the median net farm income have just been higher every time. The pie charts below talk about the particular income source of the income. Where did the money come from? Is again, because this program has the actual financials, all of them for all of the farms, and they can see that where the source of income is actually coming from, and that's clearly what the pie chart describes. Again, you'll see a little higher on livestock with the environmental cohort. Next slide, please. And then here is just some of the selected isolating some costs. I kind of neglected to mention at the outset, but we found this 6 years in a row, like clockwork. Don't know what's going to happen next year. We'll find out. But 6 years in a row now, these certified farms have always had higher net income, but we couldn't really say why. I'm confident in saying that just going out and getting water quality certified will not automatically put more money in your pocket just because you did it. But what is it about the management that certification is recognizing and that the certified farmers are conducting that is showing up to be a financial benefit? But you see some opportunities, some items here to look at. There's fertilizer costs are everything's variable. The chemical fuel you see is actually kind of higher, but maybe, there's a few more passes for things like cover crops and that sort of thing amongst the certified farms. So these are the things we're trying to tease out. Operating expense ratios, you can see there too, the changes, but these are all important, and this is an ongoing set of data that we're continuing to examine on an annual basis to learn more and more with each step. Next slide, please. So as I was just talking about, so why have they always been more profitable? Research will continue. We will continue to tease that out. Certainly our partners at the State College and University of Minnesota who are actually doing this research, we're spectators as much as anyone else. We just know that they're looking at the finances and recording the results. But we can infer some things about that influence of advanced environmental practices in farming. I think, as I said at the outset, this is whole farm management. If you isolate out individual practices, they're going to have costs. I mean, to be very just simplistic about it, take a cover crop. It's like when you buy seed and you plant the seed and you terminate them. These are all expenses. You look at that in and of itself, that's a challenge maybe for economic return, but as we're going to see from our excellent rest of the panelists, how that really does play out. But in our experience here, while that is happening, those extra expenses are being incurred in some respects, if you want to call that an extra expense. It's wrapped into an entire farming operation, a whole management system that itself is still proving to be more profitable than those who aren't doing it. And the diversification point I do want to make too. I think that's just something that we are definitely inferring from what we're seeing is that if you have more forms of income, naturally you're going to be more resilient. And so we're facing that issue and looking into this aspect of, do good managers, and automatically, if you're a good manager, do you intensify environmental practices, or is intensified environmental practices on a farm a good proxy for what you can describe as then being a good manager? So that's exactly what we're looking to continue to find out. And that's on my timer, and I'll stop right there.
That was fascinating, Brad. And you packed a lot into your 10 minutes. Thank you.
Sorry about that.
No, don't be sorry at all. This is great. And it I think will lead to some fascinating questions. We actually got our first question in the Q&A for this series. And I encourage folks to add some more questions. And again, upvote the ones you are especially interested in learning about. We're going to go now to Jeff Hadachek. Jeff is assistant professor at University of Wisconsin-Madison, and his research focuses right at the intersection of agricultural and environmental economics. From water quality issues to the massive food supply chain, Jeff applies his analytical skills to helping farmers make better decisions. And he's going to explore a brand new tool that will do exactly that. So Jeff, the mic is yours.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Steve. As a part of my role, I am also an extension specialist, and so that often involves being out in the state of Wisconsin and visiting with farmers about the decisions that they're making and giving advice about those decisions. So I've been in Wisconsin for about 2 years now, and kind of early on, I identified maybe what was somewhat of a gap in how we talk about economic practice adoption typically, and how my colleagues who are physical scientists, agronomists, soil scientists talked about cover crop adoption. And so this tool that I'm going to talk about today kind of bridges the gap between economics, agronomy, statistics to help better tell maybe a more whole picture story of the economics of cover crop adoption to better help inform decision making on farm. I also say I was kind of reflecting beforehand that the idea for this was kind of born out of research that was done using remote sense to cover crop adoption data that was born out of a partnership with CTIC and Regrow Ag. And so this is kind of a full circle moment where we're bringing sort of the research that informed this tool now to be able to better help inform decision making on farm. So we can go to the next slide. So as I was talking to farmers, I think a few things kind of were some of the motivating facts for this. First and foremost, and Brad just kind of mentioned this, that cover crops and implementing these practices are costly. The seed themselves is costly. The time that it takes to manage these another living species of plants in our field is costly as well. But the other things that are also true about cover crops and the other side of the trade-offs are that the soil health benefits from those cover crops take years to build, right? We may not see the impacts in those first few years. And then third, that the benefits may not be apparent every single year, that the resiliency effects from better soil health may manifest in drought years or in heavy flooding years, right? And all that being said, that when there's these complex agronomic relationships at play, that just makes the economic relationships even more complex as well, right? And so all of these things being true, whenever I was having these conversations, I recognized that there was a need for a more adaptable resource that can help us better communicate about soil health economics. And so now this has gone through somewhat of an iteration of testing and rolling it out for about a year now, and now I'm maybe unofficially at the stage where this is publicly available. And so I'm just going to talk about kind of how you might use that. And so with the features of this tool, one thing that I felt was really important was being able to adapt this to a farmer's specific context, but also to do it in maybe a simplified way, right? Like we don't need to implement or input every single detail of the input costs that farmers are incurring on farm. But maybe we can implement and sort of calibrate the costs and returns based on nutrient requirements, our baseline yields, tillage cost, and herbicide cost. And so one of the features of this is that you as a farmer, as a conservation professional, can go in and adjust these sliders relatively easily, and then the outcomes that will show will adjust based on what you input. So on the left-hand side are sort of what those baseline inputs might be and kind of what they're set to as defaults or what they might be here in the North Central region. And then importantly, on the right-hand side, which is where sort of these changes come into play, is that you implement some of the assumptions, the agronomic assumptions that you might expect from implementing soil health practices relative to a conventional based system. And so one example of this is that what often gets talked about is maybe a yield effect on the subsequent cash crop, right? Sometimes that's talked about as a yield drag, or sometimes it's maybe even a yield improvement, especially in those first few years. There's a lot of variability across space around that, right? And so this allows the user to play with those assumptions a little bit and to be able to test how a yield difference following a cover crop might affect your bottom line. Second, there's sort of those annual increases in soil organic matter that might result as implementing cover crops. And also sometimes folks are getting forage value out of these cover crops that may not necessarily be a tangible economic cash flow, but may be valuable for you, especially if you have livestock on your operation. And then lastly, a lot of us are receiving cash cost share assistance for these cover crops, whether it's through CTIC, through NRCS, through more localized initiatives, and that allows you to adjust those inputs as well, right? We can go to the next slide. So after inputting all of these things, you will receive essentially 3 different sets of results. The first being sort of this short-term net returns from these 2 different systems. Here you'll see this sort of green curve is what is reflected from the soil health system. And I'm calling this soil health system because I'm including both cover crops and no-till, assuming that those are the practices that are being implemented relative to what the conventional corn soy rotation might be, which is represented in yellow. Another feature of this that I felt was important, and as we often communicate as extension specialists, sometimes what we'll do is we'll bring a spreadsheet kind of view, and there'll be a specific number at the bottom line of that budget and says, hey, if you implement cover crops, your expected net returns will be $20.45, right? if we inherently say that, that number is going to be wrong for any individual operation. And so what's built in here is room for those confidence intervals. Basically, that there's a simulation model that feeds into the back end of this, where we're taking thousands of draws from random distributions of weather variables and so on to be able to predict basically a final distribution of expected net returns, right? And so that's what you see here is a visualized example of that distribution of returns in a soil health system versus a conventional system. I'll point out here that just in the soil health system, actually the mean, the average income or an average net return for the soil health system based on the inputs that we've kind of built in as a default are actually slightly less than those of the conventional system. But as we'll see kind of in the next few slides, even if those are costly to implement these soil health practices, those benefits may accrue in other ways. So we can go to the next slide. And in particular, what I felt was deficient and how I visited with farmers is that risk is an important decision that factors into farmers' decision making, right? And that's a component of implementing cover crops that we often sell short by just displaying sort of that short-term budget, right? How do you visualize that cover crops may better protect against that downside risk? And so one example of that is just comparing the percent of time from those simulated draws that your operation breaks even. And so in this example, the soil health system breaks even a higher percentage of time than that conventional system, even though, as in the last slide we saw, on average, those costs are greater in the soil health system than they are in the conventional system, right? So you're investing more costs, but you're getting a more resilient system on the end of that, right? Then we can go to the next slide. And then perhaps most importantly, what I always felt like where I was falling short when I was communicating with farmers was that understanding that those benefits that when we invest in soil health, the benefits may not accrue until years down the line, right? And that if there was a single year where the cash crop following a cover crop implementation resulted in sort of that yield drag like we talked about earlier, that folks may see that single year and may stop at that point, right? But what I felt was important was better understanding that, hey, over the long run, you're building that soil health now for payoffs down the road, right? So this long run ROI graph sort of visualizes that actually based on the inputs that we've put in just in kind of default, it's actually not until year 5 or 6 and when we expect that soil health system to pay off relative to the conventional system. And all in all, that's really, I think, telling a more holistic story. We can go to the next slide about what we might expect from investing in soil health practices, right? Touching on all of those points, not just sort of those short run costs, to be able to understand what the trade-offs are economically, whether it's investing in the risk and resilience of our operation or the long run health of our operation. We needed better tools to be able to better understand that, to better visualize that. And that's what I'm hopefully trying to get at with this tool. This is a work in progress. I certainly appreciate feedback at any stage of this. You can go visit through the link here, and I would love to hear from you about what works well, what doesn't work, so I can continue to adapt this to better help decisions in the future. So that's all from me, and I'm happy to answer questions at the end. Yeah, thanks.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. That's fascinating. That's a really exciting tool, and the ability to basically model out a group of decisions in advance and check them for their economic impact is really exciting. We're going to go now to Marcelle Lewandowski. She is Senior Research and Extension Coordinator at University of Minnesota Water Resources Center. Hers is a mind and voice behind a wide range of state and regional training resources on water quality and watershed-based conservation. With a resume that covers geography, nutritional sciences, and soil quality, Marcelle has been elbow deep in water, literally, as well as in the data resources, which is what she's going to share with you this afternoon. So Marcelle, the mic is yours.
Great, thank you. I am I coordinate the Minnesota Office for Soil Health along with Dr. Anna Cates, who is our Minnesota State Soil Health Specialist, which I think some of you in Minnesota are familiar with Anna. This resource hub is part of a larger project of conservation finance that I worked on with a number of partners. And the resource hub is at the Soil Health Nexus website, which is targeted at extension educators, but has a boatload of good resources for other folks too. You can get to it by going to the Soil Health Nexus website and clicking on the toolbox and then selecting conservation economics. What you'll find there are vetted reports and case studies examining the profitability of conservation practices. And when I say vetted, we mean we didn't include everything. We tried to select the most useful items. When I say profitability of conservation practices, we mean specifically those 4 practices in the top bar there: the cover crops, conservation, tillage, nutrient management, and managed grazing are what we're talking about. And then notice we're talking about on farms in the North Central region. So we didn't look at resources looking at the larger economics in relation to water quality and other societal benefits. Those are important to agencies and some of the programs that you deal with, but we were really focused on on-farm profitability. If you go to the next slide, there are actually about 4 slides ahead there. I listed the partners that were working on this project. There we go. And I do this in part or mainly to give credit to the North Central Region Water Network and the University of Wisconsin Extension, University of Minnesota. But I especially wanted to highlight the Environmental Defense Fund and Vincent Gauthier, who was instrumental in this project. Some people have a little hesitancy about how much environmental organizations are willing to work with farmers. But I just want to point out that EDF and Vincent in particular have been really good about understanding if they want to meet their goals, they need to respect farmers and they need to learn a little something from farmers. And they've been really good at that. I want to pick out on the next slide one of the items that you'll find in this resource hub is called the Financial Implications of Conservation Agriculture. And this is really the best compilation of on-farm financial data related to these 4 conservation practices. They pulled together this aggregated data, from the FinBin of farm business management data that Brad was talking about. So they're looking at that kind of aggregated on-farm data. They also look at some case study stories, and they look at some survey data. So they've pulled that together in a really accessible way. So a great place to start if you're looking for numbers. On the next slide, we had the whole project that we were working on had several important takeaways that we like to highlight. The first is when you're talking about do cover crops pay, you need to redirect the conversation away from yes or no, does it pay, and move it towards how. And that's come up several times by the previous 2 speakers. How does it pay? In what situations does it pay? The second big takeaway was a focus on risk management. And this is really both for the farmers and for the advisors. When you're talking about cover crops and other conservation practices, we really need to shift much more emphasis to risk management. And there's 2 facets to that. The first is minimizing the risk of adoption. So what can you do to get through that transition period successfully? and these are things you're probably familiar with. You pilot something first. You don't put it on the whole farm. You borrow equipment when you're able to try things out. Work with a mentor. There is a transition period where you're the financial payback is not going to be there, and people with a lot of experience, that transition period is shorter for them. So find those people and work with them to help you. And then determine the magnitude of risk that you are taking, and then find the conservation incentives that match that risk that you're taking. And then, but that risk of adoption is one side of it. The other side is, how can I increase the risk management on the whole, or improve the risk management across the whole operation over the years? And so that's why a lot of people will try to quantify what's the yield variability in field and across fields and across years. And a good soil health management system, we expect that yield variability will go down. Similarly, we're aiming for more profit stability. How are your inputs changing over time? So tracking some of those variables are really important to understanding how your risk over time is improving. And then the third takeaway here is engage lenders. And this was really important to us. And then the next slide shows another product of our project, the lenders' perceptions and actions on conservation agriculture. And you can find this document if you search for EDF and Ag Lender, you'll find the link to this. And what we learned from this lender survey, could you go to, yeah, there we go. You can, we learned that lenders, they don't know as much as they need to know about the economics of cover crops, about the agronomics of cover crops, and about conservation programs that are available. However, we also learned they really want to know these things. They really want to learn this stuff. And it's up to the rest of us to reach out and make that connection. We don't have good speaking coming from the academic and the conservation world. We don't connect with them as well as we could. So invite your lender to attend a field day. When you're going to a field day, bring them along. If you're hosting a field day, bring a lender or a banker to talk about how did we work through the transition period financially? How do we, what have they seen people do and how they finance this? So if you are a local conservation professional, you should have your list of all the local lenders and bankers in your area and send them information on, here's the conservation programs, here's how they work, here's what is available, so that they can communicate with the clients that they're working with. Okay, that's all I've got. I am eager to move into Q&A and hear what people are thinking.
Wonderful. Thanks a million, Marcelle. This is fascinating. The treasure trove of documents and studies that you've got, I think, are finally helping us get past I know it works, but I can't tell you how much. This is a really exciting moment, I think, in conservation agriculture and economic research. And with that, I'd like to start the Q&A with a bit of a poll. We're going to actually ask the audience the first question. Both Marcelle and Jeff talked about risk. So we're going to ask you, while everybody gets their cameras on among the speakers, how often do you anticipate you'll have a significant failure in cover crops? That was something the speakers discussed yesterday in our little pregame chat. And we'd love to get your take on what you perceive the risk of failure would be, because that obviously has an impact and has to factor into the economics. So let's fill that out, and we'll get started in doling out the questions. I think we can turn off the slides for a couple of minutes so we can see our faces. And while folks are working on the poll, let's go to the first question. And this one was to Brad. This is from someone named Anonymous. Do the farmers included in your data collection process see where they financially stand relative to nearby or comparable operations?
Sorry to get to my mute there. I mean, the short answer on that, unfortunately, in my opinion, is no, they wouldn't see that. We have some working groups and partnerships that are using the farm business management results from those reports within cohort groups. Our Minnesota Dairy Association is doing that, for instance, and so they are making some comparisons within counties and that sort of thing. But simply by participating, you will not be seeing that information.
Thank you. Jeff, I'm gonna adapt that question a little bit to your work as well. As you pull your tool together and pull data from that, will there be anonymized or aggregated data that people can share with each other or their lender, or get a sense of where they stand in relation to sort of the large group?
Yeah, I mean, no, so that not currently. I will say though that, one of the hurdles in overcoming this was just like that, there's a lot of data driven decisions in the background of this. And one of the challenges was just finding long-term studies of cover crop adoption, right? I know, we have case studies that Marcelle's shared, but like making this generalizable for, a wide audience, finding peer-reviewed data on cover crop adoption, subsequent yields, impacts on cost and other aspects of the operation, was a difficult hurdle. And so I think that's a significant need that's still needed to be addressed. But I think, efforts like what Minnesota is doing are certainly helpful. I mean, I would add that, a lot of that data was actually pulled from FinBin and, to inform some of those baseline and default decisions. And so those kinds of resources are invaluable for this kind of work. So, yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, that's, again, phenomenal treasure trove.
And I'll
Before-
highlight,
okay.
excuse me, the link that you shared in the chat has the annual reports from that FinBin data. So if you all want to see that, that's available.
Excellent. Thank you. All right, so we've got the results of the poll. And so when we talk about risk, anticipating the significant failure, about 6% said every year. About once every 2 to 3 years is 31%. About 38% say about once every 5 years. 19% say once every 10 years. And 6% say my cover's always established, which I think is fascinating perspective, because obviously those data affect the kinds of equations and the kinds of outcomes that the math will generate. And I think too that, and hopefully we can get to this in this Q&A, but I think it should be really interesting too to consider what failure looks like and what success looks like, and whether our goals in the North Central region are really going to look like the head-high cereal ryegrass stands that we expect to see farther south, for instance. Do we really need to see that in the North Central, or are goals being met on fields that look like they may be limping along? But before we'll try to take that if we have time at the end. In the meantime, I do want to get to another anonymous attendee. And again, I think this came up during your talk, Brad. Of the water quality certified farms, are there potentially farms that are skewing the results? And if so, what are they doing that's making them more profitable?
This is actually a great one. I'm sorry, I'm digressing a little bit, but 2023, we saw the most precipitous drop in overall farm income for all farms. That is at just a tragic scale. 2024, we saw that reduce even further among the non-certified farms. The certified farms in 2024 actually had double the income of the non-certified farms. Was something skewing that? Yes, livestock. I mean, if you're buying or selling dairy cows, if you're in the beef market, that, and it showed in the, again, they have the actual financials. They showed over 50% of the income of these certified farms, or about 50%, if I'm remembering my own slides correctly, came from livestock that year. So one given year, there was a skewage, if you will, because beef was profitable and is, thank goodness for it. But we certainly see that as just speaking to, again, the advantage of that diversification in your production system, along with the conservation that goes along with it. I mean, of course, I'm biased, perhaps, but when I look at those results, I see the 5 principles of soil health, right? They're just reflected in what's happening economically.
That is tremendous. Does anybody else want to speak to outliers that they've seen and the impact that that may have as a model for other farmers?
I mean, outliers can work in both ways, right? Like, I think you can have you can have really negative experiences too, and that informs decisions, or experiences inform later on decisions. And that's, I think, maybe one of the goals of trying to get around that and visualizing this as more of like a long-term portfolio investment than did it pay off in a single year versus the year prior, right? And that's why I wanted to kind of shift that conversation a little bit with you know, some of the efforts that I put into the tool, is that thinking about this more as a long run investment. And also to your point earlier, Steve, is like maybe your goals are different than just short-term profits, right? And hopefully, you know, those things can kind of be adapted to what your individual goals may be, whether it's water quality in mind, whether it's long-term profitability or land values. Those things can be all true within a soil health system, right?
And
Well,
Marcelle,
Brett.
do outliers in the communication world often become case studies? So do you have, I guess, from your experience with that mound of great data and resources that you have folks in there that can make good highlights or good examples for interested readers?
Yeah, I don't know offhand. Every case is a different case. And if you go to the MOSH website, mosh.umn.edu, on the resources, there is a link to some case studies, or farmmaps.umn.edu. I can share that link as well. Is a great place to see these on a map. You can see here's the case studies and where they are around Minnesota, and find somebody near you and get some of that. What Brad is saying does fit with the observations we're seeing around the state, which are that the people who are successful, or the people who are financially successful quicker, generally have some livestock, or they have some way to graze their cover crops or something like that. And they're also looking at no-till. They're not doing cover crops alone. And so the no-till and the livestock really help make the cover crops pay off a little bit more reliably. But that's just our observation, what we see.
Tremendous. Well, here's another observation question from Ted Shambaugh. It says, I noticed the average farm size, and I think, again, this is going to be to Brad's study, is rather small. So do you find the adoption of the cover crop program more adapted on owner-operated farms rather than on cash rent farms? Oh, you're on mute.
I apologize for that. I guess I don't recall for sure. I know that in our entire farming, certified farm, there's a collection that we're actually double the average size of all other Minnesota farms, both of which change because of, you know, small CSAs and that sort of thing, which are wonderful to have participating, of course. But the certified farms actually are running larger than non-certified farms. The sample in this group, I think we're perhaps a little smaller, but the farms that we work with day in and day out through the certification program, the large farms, in some instances, I will just say it without naming names here, but some of the best, most well-resourced and largest farms are the ones that get to adopt the soil health practice and the cover crops quicker and faster and more efficient than the smaller farms, frankly. And we see that happen. We certainly have had that experience where they've been able to make whole-scale changes overnight, basically, because they have those resources.
It's interesting.
I'll add a point to that second part of the question
Sure.
about renting versus owner-operated farms. I mean, I think that one of the things we think about as economists are incentives, and I think it is true that we've seen that research has shown, I think maybe actually using some of the same data that I mentioned earlier, that land values see positive returns from soil health practices before, right? And so that indicates that the owner themselves will sort of reap the benefits from higher productivity land, higher valued land later on. But I think there's an opportunity there to work with, say, landowners that are renting their land to incorporate that into contracts with renters, right? Incorporating sort of the expectation for soil health practices is one opportunity, and sort of a private cost share agreement, not necessarily cost share like we think about in terms of public funding or government funding, but cost sharing between the landowner and the operator, I think is an opportunity for expansion for rented land.
Marcelle, did you have anything you wanted to add into that?
Yeah, I'm going to highlight one more resource I'm really excited about, which is the Office for Soil Health conducted a statewide Minnesota survey of farmers asking about soil management practices, and it was a long survey. We asked all sorts of interesting things about, are they renting, are they owning, and what, why do they do some of these different practices? We are in the process of just finishing up the full report, and again, go to mosh.umn.edu, and I'll make sure it's on the highlighted on the homepage there when we get that out. But I think you'll find some more information on all of these questions there.
When we say MOSH, is that M-A-S-H or M-O-S-H?
M-O-S-H, the Minnesota Office for Soil Health.
That makes a lot
Thanks
of sense.
for clarifying.
No problem. So yeah, what's fascinating too is this idea of kind of combining all the things you said. Bring your lender to a field day, bring your landlord to a field day, bring the person you want to rent from to a field day about conservation practices. Let's all share that information and get that sorted. So I see that Brad is answering David Buelen's question about whether government payments were included in the net returns. And so I'll try to read that out when it's available. In the meantime, since we are wrapping up, we're coming to the top of the hour, I want to start the wrap up. First of all, say if you were going to be at Farm Progress, stop by the booth for the Illinois Corn Growers Association. So that's lot 605. CTIC will be there with Illinois Corn Growers Association, showing off that Conservation Connector app that Ryan mentioned early in the program. And you'll get to take it for a test drive and learn more about what that can do. So we look forward to seeing you there. And also you can check out connector.ag to kind of field test it right now. We'll go on to the next slide, which is basically a great big, if you like this, there's more behind it. We have a series of webinars from this set that are archived. This one will join them in the next few days, but you can go on to the ctic.org website and check out our previous cover crops on issues of Farmers for Soil Health and cover crops. And that gives me the opportunity to basically just say thank you to our speakers, to Ryan and Teagan and Justin, And to David Ferbata, who is doing all the magic behind the curtain that makes this all happen, unglitchy. Again, if we can ever be of help, CTIC is there to share information, to provide information, to connect people, and we'd love to continue doing that as we promote cover crops where they work for folks and help farmers achieve the kinds of economic success that we've talked about today. So thank you very much, everybody.